Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. You guys have been sending in some really interesting articles on Hedera,
Yeah,
or HBAR, as I usually hear it,
right.
and this whole tokenization thing that's really exploding right now.
Yeah, definitely seems to be getting a lot of attention.
It seems like everyone's talking about tokenization as the next big thing.
It's definitely got the financial world buzzing, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And what I think is really interesting is how it's kind of like blurring the lines
yeah,
between that traditional finance world and the crypto world.
right. And HBAR seems to be right in the middle of it all.
Yeah, for sure.
So for our listeners who maybe aren't totally up to speed, can you give us like a super quick rundown of what exactly HBAR is and how it all connects to this thing called Hedera?
Sure. So HBR is the cryptocurrency.
Okay,
That's the native cryptocurrency of the Hedera network.
gotcha.
And that's kind of a key distinction.
Okay,
It's the fuel that powers everything that's happening on this platform.
okay.
But Hedera itself is not actually a blockchain.
Oh, interesting.
It's a hash graph.
Ah, yes, the hash graph. I've heard that term thrown around.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I never really understood what it is or what makes it different.
Yeah, so that's kind of the secret sauce
Okay,
that gives Hedera its speed and security advantage.
okay.
So instead of using like a chain of blocks,
Right.
like Bitcoin or Ethereum,
Mhm.
the hash graph uses this thing called a gossiping protocol.
Gossiping protocol. What is this high school?
Yeah, it sounds a little strange, but basically
Okay.
all these nodes on the network,
Yeah.
they're rapidly sharing information about transactions with each other.
So they're all gossiping about the latest transactions.
Exactly, you got it. It's kind of like a high-tech game of telephone,
Okay, I get it.
but incredibly efficient and secure.
So if it's so great, if it's so much more efficient and secure, why isn't everyone using it?
That's a good question. I think partly it's just because blockchain technology has had a bit of a head start.
Yeah, that's
That's
it.
what everyone's familiar with.
Right.
But Hashgraph is catching up fast, especially for these applications where speed and security are like super important.
Okay.
And that's especially true when we start talking about something as potentially revolutionary as tokenization.
Okay, so let's talk about tokenization.
Yeah.
These articles you sent over, they mention tokenizing everything.
It's wild, right?
Yeah, like real estate, carbon credits.
Pretty much anything you can think of.
I get the basic idea, but can you break it down for our listeners? Like, how does it actually work in practice?
Okay, so imagine this. You have a real-world asset.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Okay.
A piece of property, a work of art, even company shares.
Gotcha.
And you create a digital version of it
Okay.
on a blockchain, or in this case, on Hedera's hash graph.
So it's kind of like having a digital deed to a house or a digital stock certificate.
Exactly. And that digital representation, we call it a token.
Okay.
And it can be traded, bought, and sold just like any other cryptocurrency.
Okay, so what makes that different from just buying stock in a real estate company?
Well, let's take an example. Here's this company, Red Swan.
Okay.
They're using Hedera to fractionalize ownership of real estate.
Okay, fractional, what does that even mean?
So traditionally, if you wanted to invest in like a big commercial property,
Yeah.
you'd need millions of dollars.
Right.
But with tokenization, they can divide that ownership up
Okay.
into tiny little pieces represented by tokens.
Got it. So
Yeah.
instead of needing millions of dollars, I could potentially buy a piece of a skyscraper for a few $100.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that seems like it would be a game changer.
Yeah, it makes it accessible to so many more people.
Right.
And because these tokens are easily tradable, it makes the whole market way more liquid.
So you're not stuck in a long, complicated process if you want to sell.
Exactly.
This is all pretty mind-blowing, but I'm also wondering why Hedera seems to be the one leading this whole tokenization charge. I mean, aren't there bigger players in the crypto space?
Oh, there definitely are.
Yeah.
And a lot of the big names in traditional finance are starting to pay attention too.
Like who?
Well, you've got JP Morgan,
Okay, huge.
BlackRock,
Yeah.
BNY Mellon. They're all exploring this.
So how does Hedera compete with those giants?
Well, they've got this unique set of features that make them really appealing.
Like what?
Their focus on security and regulatory compliance is huge.
Yeah, I was reading about that.
They've been really deliberate about building a platform that meets the needs of both the crypto world
Right.
and the demands of traditional finance.
Makes sense.
They've got this really robust and transparent governance model with a council of leading organizations overseeing everything.
So it's not just some anonymous developers in their basement calling the shots.
Right.
There's actual accountability.
Yeah, and that's super attractive to those big institutional investors.
Yeah, because they need to know their money is safe.
Exactly. They're looking for a trustworthy and reliable platform.
It sounds like they're playing the long game.
Yeah, Definitely strategic.
So what's been their biggest move so far?
Well, they launched this thing called the Hedera Asset Tokenization Studio.
Oh, what?
The ATS for short.
Okay, the ATS.
Yeah, it basically gives businesses and institutions all the tools they need
Okay.
to create and manage their own tokenized assets.
So it's like a one-stop shop for tokenization.
Yeah, you could say that.
So do we have any real-world examples of companies using this ATS?
Oh, yeah, tons.
Okay, like who?
There's this company, DOVU.
EOVU. Okay.
They're focused on creating a global market for carbon credits,
Okay.
and they're using Hedera to tokenize those credits.
Wait, so I could actually invest in efforts to fight climate change?
Yep.
Through these tokens?
It's a whole new world of impact investing.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then you've got companies like Arcax.
Arcax.
They're a regulated digital asset exchange,
Okay.
and they're using Hedera to tokenize traditional financial instruments.
So they're like bridging the gap between the old way of doing things
Exactly.
and this new tokenized world.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
It's kind of scary too, though, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like everything we thought we knew about finance is changing so fast.
Definitely. And I think that's a big part of what's driving all the excitement around HBAR right now.
Yeah, its price has been going crazy.
It's up something like 200% in the past month.
Yeah, the articles you sent mentioned that. And there was also something about an HBAR ETF in the works.
Oh, yeah. That's big news.
Yeah, what's the deal with that?
So Canary Capital just filed for an HBAR ETF with the SEC.
And if it gets approved?
It could be huge
Why?
because it would make it so much easier for those big institutional investors
Right.
to get exposure to HBAR.
Okay, hold on. Before we go any further,
Yeah.
let's back up for a second and explain what an ETF is
Sure.
and why this one would be such a big deal.
Okay, so an ETF, it stands for Exchange Traded Fund.
Okay.
It's basically a basket of assets.
Okay.
In this case, it would be all HBR.
Got it.
And that basket is traded on a stock exchange.
Okay. So it makes it easier for people to invest in HBR
Exactly.
without having to buy it directly on a crypto exchange.
Yep, you got it.
So for someone who's new to all this crypto stuff, this could be a way to dip their toes in.
Exactly. It lowers the barrier to entry.
Makes sense.
And it could bring in a ton of new investors.
Which would probably push the price up even more.
Yeah, potentially.
Okay, so before we get into what all this means for our listeners,
Yeah.
let's just look at some of the raw numbers here.
Okay.
Where's HBAR trading right now?
Well, right now, as we're talking, HBR is trading at $0.2969,
Okay.
which is a new high.
Wow. And what about market cap?
Market cap is sitting at about $11.34 billion.
Billion with a B.
Yeah,
Wow, so that's a pretty strong showing.
it is.
Okay, what about trading volume?
The 24-hour trading volume is almost $5 billion.
Wow, so people are really moving this thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement out there.
Okay, but that also means there's a lot of volatility, right?
Definitely. It's important to remember that crypto can be really volatile.
Right. What goes up can come down just as fast.
Exactly. So while there's potential for big gains,
Yeah.
there's also the risk of big losses.
Okay, so let's recap what we've talked about.
Yeah.
We've got HBAR, we've got Hedera, and how this hash graph technology is different.
Yeah.
And we talked about how they're playing a leading role in this whole tokenization boom.
Sure.
But the big question is, what does all this mean for our listener, for you?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, we need to figure out what this future built on tokenization might look like.
Exactly.
And how you can potentially benefit from it.
And where the potential pitfalls might be lurking.
Right, because we don't want anyone to get blindsided.
Definitely.
So let's dive into that.
Let's do it.
So we've painted this picture of the future where you can tokenize anything,
Yeah.
skyscrapers, carbon credits,
Pretty much.
and trade them all with a few clicks.
It's pretty amazing.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
Are there any downsides?
Well, like with any new technology,
right.
there are always risks.
Okay, like
I think one of the biggest ones right now is regulatory uncertainty.
in terms of tokenization?
Yeah, exactly.
So what do you mean by that?
Well, governments around the world, they're still trying to figure out
Yeah.
how to classify these tokenized assets.
Okay, so we're kind of in the Wild West phase,
Yeah, kind of.
but with billions of dollars at stake.
Yeah, and that can be a little unnerving for investors.
So what are some things investors should be thinking about?
Well, I mean, new regulations could impact how these tokens are traded,
Okay.
how they're taxed,
Right.
even if certain types of assets are allowed to be tokenized at all.
So it's not just about jumping in because the price is going up.
Right.
You really need to understand the bigger picture.
You definitely want to do your research.
And diversify.
Always diversify.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Especially in a market like this.
Right, so this is all still very new.
Oh, yeah, this is like the early days of the internet.
Wow, so we really have no idea where this is going.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
But there are definitely a lot of unknowns.
So let's play a little game of what if here.
Okay.
Let's say tokenization does take off. The way a lot of these analysts are predicting,
Okay.
what are some of the potential upsides we could see?
Well, I think the most obvious benefit is increased accessibility.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit before.
Right. So, tokenization can open up investment opportunities to people who could never have dreamed of investing in these things before.
So like owning a piece of a Picasso.
Exactly.
Or investing in like a renewable energy project in another country.
Yes.
Those are things that were just totally out of reach for most people.
Yeah. And beyond accessibility, you also have increased liquidity in these markets.
What do you mean?
Well, imagine being able to easily buy or sell fractional ownership of a rare artwork.
Okay.
Or a vintage car.
Right.
It just creates so much more efficiency and transparency.
So it's good for buyers and sellers.
Yeah, potentially.
But let's not get too carried away here.
Right.
You mentioned risks earlier.
Oh, yeah. There are definitely risks.
What are some of the things we need to be worried about?
Well, one concern is always the potential for fraud and manipulation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a new market.
Right.
People are going to try to take advantage.
So buyer beware.
Exactly. You need to do your due diligence.
Don't just blindly trust any token that comes along.
Right. And then there's the cybersecurity aspect.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, if these tokenized assets are basically just digital representations, they become prime targets for hackers.
So security is super important.
Hugely important.
And that kind of brings us back to Hedera.
Yeah.
And their focus on security and this whole hash graph thing.
Yeah, it seems like they've really thought about this stuff.
And their governance model with the council.
Yeah, it's all designed to address these concerns.
So it sounds like they're really trying to lay the foundation for a more stable tokenized economy.
I think that's their goal.
But what about the competition?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about those big financial institutions earlier.
Right, like JP Morgan and BlackRock.
Yeah, how do you think they're going to impact all of this?
Well, those guys, they bring a lot of power.
Yeah.
Money connections, experience.
Right. They know how to play the game.
They could definitely become major players in this space.
So it's kind of a David and Goliath situation here.
Kind of, yeah.
You've got Hedera, this innovative upstart.
Yeah.
Going up against these giants.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, but competition is good, right?
Yeah. It drives innovation.
Balance everyone better.
Exactly.
So for our listeners who are following all of this, what should they be watching for?
Well, I think one thing to watch is just the growth of the tokenized asset market itself.
So like how much money is flowing into these tokens?
Yeah, exactly. Are we seeing more and more assets being tokenized?
Okay, what else?
Keep an eye on any announcements from regulators.
Government, central banks, that kind of thing.
Yeah, any big decisions from them could have a big impact.
And what about new use cases for tokenization?
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
So are we going to see tokenized real estate, tokenized artwork?
Yeah.
Tokenized music royalties?
Maybe even things we haven't even thought of yet.
So pay attention to those headlines.
Exactly.
And we also need to keep an eye on the technology itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can Hedera handle all this growth?
Right. Can they scale their platform?
Are they going to attract more developers?
Yeah, it's about the whole ecosystem.
Not just the price of HBAR.
The price is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right. We need to look at the bigger picture.
And, we've been talking a lot about the economics, the technology.
Right.
But there's another really important aspect we need to consider.
What's that?
The human element.
Oh, yeah, the impact on people.
Exactly.
This isn't just about making money.
Right.
It's about how this is going to change people's lives.
Yeah. How will tokenization affect employment?
Will it create jobs?
Right. Or will it lead to job losses?
What about access to things like healthcare and education?
These are all important questions.
Yeah, big questions.
And we also need to think about unintended consequences.
Like what?
Could tokenization make inequality worse?
Right.
Could it lead to even more concentration of wealth and power?
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
It seems like we're walking this tightrope between wanting to embrace the benefits and being mindful of the risks.
You put it perfectly.
So where do we go from here?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah. How do our listeners get involved?
How do they learn more?
How do they become part of this conversation?
I think that's a great place to wrap up and leave our listeners with some final thoughts.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
From the technical details of Hedera
Yeah.
to this whole vision of a tokenized future.
Right, and all the potential risks and rewards.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this exploration of HBAR and tokenization, what are some things our listeners can do to really become a part of this?
Well, first off, I think it's all about staying curious. Keep learning. Don't be afraid to dive deeper into these topics.
Yeah, there's a ton of information out there.
Right. Books, articles, online forums.
And don't just passively absorb it all.
Yeah. You got to engage with it. Think critically. Form your own opinions.
Challenge the ideas.
Exactly.
So where can people go to do that?
Well, there are tons of online communities
Right.
dedicated to Hedera and tokenization.
Okay. So connect with other enthusiasts.
Yeah. Share your thoughts. Learn from others.
It's like we've been saying, this isn't just about watching the future happen.
It's about shaping it.
Right. And that means having a voice.
Absolutely.
So speak up, share your ideas, talk to policymakers, regulators.
Advocate for responsible development of this technology.
Because at the end of the day, the future of tokenization is going to be determined by the choices we make today.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. And it leads me to the big takeaway I want our listeners to walk away with.
Okay, shoot.
The thing I hope they'll remember long after this deep dive is over.
I'm listening.
It's this: the future of finance is literally being rewritten.
It really is.
Right before our eyes.
Yeah. And while there are definitely risks and a lot of uncertainty, it's also just this incredible potential for positive change.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about.
So tokenization could really open up investment opportunities for so many people.
To people who have been traditionally excluded.
Exactly.
It could make markets more efficient, more transparent.
And maybe even help us tackle some of these big global problems.
Yeah, like climate change.
Exactly. But we need to approach all of this with a healthy dose of caution.
Right. Do you research, understand the risks? Think about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And most importantly, get involved.
Yeah.
The future isn't something that just happens to us.
We create it.
Exactly. So as you keep exploring this world of HBAR and tokenization, I want you to ask yourself, what kind of future do you want to build?
That's a great question.
And on that note, we'll leave you with that thought.
Okay.
Until next time, keep diving, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
See you next time.